All right, so we are now going into week 8, first week in November, election week. Remember that there is no school on November 3rd, so those of you that are B students, your day 2 assignment will be distance, even though it's listed in here as day 2, at least for 3rd and 5th hour. So this is what we have for this week. You'll always be looking at this intro. But day 1, those of you that are in class, we are going to discuss the difference, which I think is fitting during our election period, the similarities and differences between Federalists and Democrat Republicans, which is way into kind of the difference in our political system. And so this chart right here, which I'm going to kind of briefly go over, just explains the differences between both sides of our political system. And this is one of the things that we talked about last week that George Washington very much was unnerved about when he became president. He did not like the fact that we were kind of focusing into these two-sided political systems. And basically this was a belief that the federal government should have control over all of the different states versus the Democrat Republicans who felt like the states should make decisions and then the federal government should just kind of regulate that. The big issue that this kind of fell under initially was between the guys of Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson. If any of you are big music fans and you got into the whole Hamilton Broadway show, this is where basically all those ideas fell into. And there's so many issues that essentially would become part of this. And we're going to talk about that by looking at that chart. There's a video here that goes into the explanation of that. And essentially what you're supposed to do is just explain the differences between the Federalists and Democrat Republicans. Now, to kind of apply it to today, if you look at the ideas of the Republicans versus the Democrats, there's a lot of issues that are very different, but there's still that real core idea of the role of the federal government. That is still one of the things that Republicans and Democrats differ over. Democrats typically today want more federal government involvement. Republicans usually want less government involvement. They want the states to take care of it. So the way all that kind of plays out over 200 years, we'll talk about that throughout the school year. It kind of goes back and forth over those issues. But initially, those ideas are going to fall under some of these ideas of the courts. All right. And so the Battle of Fallen Timbers, Jay Treaty, all these things have to deal with kind of federal decisions. The Judiciary Act of 1801 and how the federal government decides who would become president. Also going in with the ideas of the 12th Amendment. Remember the 12th Amendment. And then the Marbury versus Madison, an idea of judicial review, which really plays into our third branch of government of the Supreme Court, where they basically make decisions focused on this idea of the justice system. Should the court have a role of deciding what is a federal or a state law? And Marbury versus Madison is one of the first court cases where this idea of saying the Supreme Court can look at these laws, review them, and say whether they would be an actual federal law or not. So those are your terms for this week. Again, one of the things that we're going to do for this unit is focus just on the vocabulary this time. And so that for that reason, the only summative we're going to have for this week is going to be focused on the objective ideas. So go back to the quizzes from last week and make sure that you get those taken care of and reviewed before you go ahead and take this. And that's going to be it for the week.